a bilingual letter. Oh, okay. Now recording. Got it. So this is the letter that is sent out immediately. And as you can see, it's bilingual. And it is sent to every homeowner whose title has been transferred to a different homeowner. So if your house is literally being stolen from you, it's done with pieces of paper at the clerk recorder's office. And this means if there's fraud or forgery or identity theft involved, the person owning this house may have no idea until this letter arrives. The letter asks the homeowner, are you aware that title to your home has been transferred to another person, and includes copies of the first couple pages of the documents that were just filed that might be part of fraud. And this is the first step in getting people to have awareness that this is going on. And we let people know that they can, if they're aware of the transaction, they can just disregard this notice. If they're not aware of the transaction, then they should call our real estate fraud unit. And we give them the address to contact us either by email or phone, so that we can then work at seeing what may have happened to cause this transfer and who's responsible for the transfer. And if it is something that we can reverse or undo. One of the first cases that we worked with in this regard involved an unemployed real estate agent who was living with mom and dad. And he actually forged his parents' signature on a grant deed, which effectively gave their home to him. And since he forged his parents' signatures on this document, they had no idea that this had been done. This could have been this act could have been undiscovered for months or years, even could have been undiscovered when the parents died and other family members realized that the son stole the house out from under the rest of the family. When we have the people who are the fraud victims dying, we can't prove the fact of fraud, because how am I going to prove that that's not that person's signature? We've had cases presented to us where basically it's the heirs fighting over who mom and dad really left the property to. Those are frustrating for us to get involved in. And a lot of times they're also suing each other and trying to get each other prosecuted. And showing us, well, here's a finger or a handwriting expert who says this is not my dad's signature. Okay, that might work in a civil case, but for us to file a criminal case, I have to be able to prove to 12 people unanimously that the evidence supports conviction and that the evidence overcomes the accused person's presumption of innocence and is evidence that is so convincing that it is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And so if one expert says that's not dad's signature, then the other side will get an expert that says it is, and I can't prove anything. So those are not cases that end up being something that we can prosecute. We review them. We end up saying, you're just going to have to duke it out in civil court. Sorry. And the best thing really is having this letter alert the homeowner to the fact that there is action being taken against what's generally people's biggest asset, your home. In this case, one of the siblings saw the letter, contacted the DA's office, and the son was actually prosecuted. More importantly, the fraudulent deed, the court could order reversal of that deed as part of the prosecution. This is our foreclosure advisory letter. And these go out every time a house goes into default. So notice of default is the first notice that a homeowner receives that advises them that they may lose their home to a foreclosure. We average 15 to 20 of these letters that we send out every week when somebody goes into foreclosure. And important to know that they work. Last September, we got a letter from a woman who had inherited her parents' home. She had no idea that it was in default. She called, or she'd received this letter. She called and spoke to Alex, our legal assistant, in response to the letter, and Alex was able to explain to her what had happened, to do the research and figure out that her parents' home was in foreclosure. And her name was Gloria, and Gloria was able to take care of the past due amounts before the house was lost to foreclosure. The default amount was less than $6,000 on a $200,000 mortgage for her parents' house that she had inherited, and the house was actually worth more than $850,000. So this was a really great success of this program in preventing a house from being lost to foreclosure when, in these circumstances, the homeowner just had no idea about what was going on. We explained to people a couple of really important things. Number one, that they may get unsolicited offers of help, because these are all public records. We do have scammers that search these public records and look for people in default. These generally are people in extreme financial distress who are very vulnerable to manipulation and fraud. And so we're warning people that you're going to get contacted by people that are going to try to convince you that you can sell your home to me and I'm going to save you, or I will rescue you from foreclosure. And often these people don't have the homeowner's best interests in mind, and they're looking either to grab the equity from the home or take power over the home, or even take title to the home. So we let folks know it's really important that they do something immediately, or they could lose their home to foreclosure. One of the things that's really hard for us to explain to people is that once a home has been sold as part of foreclosure, it's gone. We cannot get it back for you. And so we give people resources to free real estate advice. We work with Pacific Community Services and the Community Housing Development Corporation. You can see their contact information in the letter. We also give people a resource for real estate advice from the Law Center, or we refer people to the Contra Costa Bar Association, which is a place where they can get a referral to a local lawyer in good standing, who does real estate, because I can't represent individual people, and I can't give people legal advice. I'm a prosecutor, so when people need to find out what should I do, that's not something the DA's office can help you with. We also want people to know that if they actually sold their property or paid somebody to rescue them from foreclosure, they actually could be a victim of a form of foreclosure fraud. And we'll talk about that more later. And one of the examples is it is completely illegal for a foreclosure consultant to acquire an interest in property. In other words, I'm going to use your property as collateral while I help you get a better loan. So you just need to sign this deed, or I'm going to record a lien against your home. That's illegal, because it's so easy to abuse distressed people and convince them that if you do these things that are fraudulent or exploitative, it will save your home. When I say that we have a consumer fraud complaint that people can download from the internet, this is what the form looks like. It's a fillable form, and so you can download it. This is one of the links to that form, or if you just go to the DA's office website, you'll see a tab that says forms. Just click on that tab and you'll see the form. Or if you can't find where the form is, just call us and we'll tell you where to find the form. And then these forms can be mailed to us, delivered to us, or emailed to us. And when they involve real estate, they first go to Alex to triage for what kind of potential fraud that we're looking at. One of the, give you an example of one that we worked on was back in 2017. We received one of these from a woman who was living in Richmond, who had just been evicted from a home. And a very unfortunate situation. The elderly homeowner had let her and her son stay with him, and then he died. And when he died, she just kept living in the house. When he died, and there was an obituary, our fraudsters went into action. They forged his name on a deed, and they filed the deed, and it was a series of deeds. Fraudster number one forged his signature and deeded the property over to fraudster number 2, who then deeded it to his girlfriend. And this case involved a notary, which was really interesting. There's a lot of confusion about what a notary does. And if something is notarized, does that mean that the person who signed it was okay to sign it? And I know we've got some folks that are fiduciaries and work with seniors here. It's just really important to know that all a notary does is provide proof that the person who signed the document is in fact the person. And they're supposed to do that by taking their photo ID and then thumbprint that goes into their notary book. And that this book is subject to review by law enforcement on demand. And so in this case, the documents were all notarized that the homeowner had signed them, but they were dated after he died. So that was clue number 1. And when we went back and looked at the notary's book, interesting, she'd notarized the documents, but his thumbprint and his ID were not in her book. Excuse me, because she was part of the scam. She was getting paid and working with these guys who were in the business of looking at obituaries and trying to steal homes from people that they didn't think had a lot of family that were interested or cared about them. And in this case, the issues are still going on. And we're currently working with the city of Richmond to untangle this and make sure that the homeowner's rightful heirs get the property, not the folks that filed and forged the deeds. The really sad thing was the lady who was living in this house with her son had no legal claim to the house. And we had to let her know that she had no legal right to remain in the house. The city of Richmond got involved because the house is basically inhabitable or uninhabitable. It has been red tagged. It is in extreme disrepair. And so we actually referred her to the Family Justice Center for support in finding and relocating to new housing. It needs significant work to make it habitable again. And so it looks like the city of Richmond and the Richmond City Attorney's Office is going to commence legal proceedings, and we'll get involved with those proceedings and ask the court to order reversal of the fraudulent deeds. And then it goes into probate to figure out who the rightful heirs of our homeowner's property really are and should be. Excuse me. Something about our complaint forms, we can't take complaints over the phone because obviously even explaining how this scam worked, real estate fraud is really complicated and it takes a lot for us to understand. We need to see documents, we need to do our own research. Also, not all of our complaints result in a criminal investigation because not everything is going to be something that's criminal. We can't represent individuals in non-criminal civil matters. We can't give legal advice. We can't undo a bad business deal. If somebody regrets a real estate transaction, they can't claim that it's fraud and make us force the other guy to let it go. And our filing standard, as I mentioned, in criminal cases is governed by both California law and the United States and California Constitution. So I need the conduct of the person to fit into a crime under California law. And I need to have enough evidence, again, that overcomes the accused person's presumption of innocence and convinces 12 people that all elements of a criminal offense are met. So some of the challenges are when we're proving fraud at the time of the transaction, the accused person had to have had an intent to defraud our victim. If they were making promises that were true at the time and ended up being false, ended up being things they couldn't do later, those don't end up being things that support a prosecution for us. So one of the ways that we start is using this complaint form, at least to get the ball rolling. So when we're looking at what common real estate crimes are, we're talking about fraud that's committed in connection with the purchase, sale, or financing of real property. And of course, anyone can be vulnerable to real estate fraud, identity theft. However, elderly and economically challenged members of our community are those who are the most targeted. an AARP study highlighted characteristics of people older than 50, which turns out is me, which makes us easy targets for scams because in general, we, the people over 50, we expect honesty in the marketplace. We're less likely to take action when we're defrauded. We are less knowledgeable about our rights in an increasingly complex marketplace. We're more likely to be home than our younger neighbors. And so when people go door to door with solicitations that are fraudulent, there we are. And we're often within easy reach of solicitors. And of course, other vulnerabilities would be people who are first-time home buyers or first-time renters, those who are undocumented or unbanked, so people who don't have accounts in financial institutions, which is becoming more and more common as we have things like PayPal and Venmo and prepaid debit cards that are how people are conducting their financial transactions. Folks who don't speak English, folks who are uncomfortable engaging criminal justice partners for a variety of reasons. And in particular right now, families with children to house. So if you lose your housing and you've got kids, you're going to grab at whatever you're offered, especially families that are trying to keep their kids at the same schools or in the same neighborhoods. And we're seeing people who prey on members of their own culture group as a means by which to gain trust. So we're seeing people in the Spanish-speaking community preying on other Spanish speakers because you're like me, so right? I wouldn't defraud you. Spam risk. So the common crimes, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time giving you a criminal law course because not everybody here, other than Ken McCormick, really will be using this information. But I think when we're talking to folks about when fraud is a crime and when it's not, it's important to look at the types of crimes that I could charge a person with, which means that I need the conduct and the evidence to show these things. So we look at theft, theft of real estate or theft of the equity, the equity in the real estate is something that we definitely can look at. And what we're seeing is crimes that are types of theft that are theft by trick or theft by false representation. And these are different theories of stealing something. Generally, theft is, sorry, somebody's pulling up in front of my house. Theft is a crime of taking something to permanently deprive a person of it without their consent. But what do you do when you are tricked into giving your consent or you're lied to get your consent? And when we were looking at the example I gave you where they forged the senior's name or forged the parent's name on the deed, and then they became the owners of the house by virtue of that piece of paper that got filed with the clerk's office, that would be a standard theft. The parents did not consent to their son becoming the owner of their house. But if you're tricked into signing that document, or if you're lied to get you to sign something that conveys ownership in your house, the consent itself is fraudulently obtained. Forgery, those are crimes where somebody's name is signed to documents without their consent. And those might be documents like a power of attorney, a deed, a trust, or loan documents. And those names are signed when the suspect has the intent to defraud our victim and knowing that they don't have authority to sign that person's name. So you can give somebody authority to sign your name. I've had to do that for the Family Justice Center when I can't get over to sign some of our grant documents since I'm the chair of our board of directors. I've given consent and I do it in an email. So we have evidence of the fact that I gave my consent. Please sign that document in my name because I can't get there in time to sign it. But I need to be able to have a victim say, this is not my signature. I never signed that document. We have the requirement of notarizing documents so that we can prove this is the person who signed the document. And those of us who work with seniors know that there's the concern that a person didn't understand what they signed. They didn't have the mental or legal capacity to understand that signature, or they were rushed into signing it, or they didn't read what they signed. There's a presumption that if you sign something, you've read and understood it. So it's really important that when we're working with people that are seniors or new homeowners or going through foreclosure, don't rush, read everything before you sign it. When forged documents are filed with our clerk's office, that is another crime. It is a felony to file false or forged documents with the court. And then we have the question of, how do we know who filed them? Well, we have cameras at the clerk's office. There are cameras pretty much everywhere, but we have cameras at the window so we can see who comes in to file documents. And if we're looking at, was this you, the person in front of me, who filed the document, or are you a victim of identity theft because somebody is putting your name on documents without your knowledge? No, these are pictures of you filing this document. Foreclosure fraud is something that involves those foreclosure consultants who can find out through public records that a person is in financial distress and might be losing their home to default. And so we'll talk about the law that governs those folks and how those scams are often perpetrated. And then rent skimming is a little bit of a complicated thing. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we get into the next few slides. So we're seeing foreclosure rescue scams. This would be a situation where the homeowner is in default, which means they've missed too many mortgage payments. Usually 3 mortgage payments will get you in default. And our homeowner is unable to refinance the loan that they use to get their mortgage for their house. It might be because they don't have good enough credit to get a new loan that they can afford. Maybe their house is upside down, meaning in this topsy-turvy real estate market that they owe more than the house currently is worth. And we'll have a scammer who makes contact with our homeowner, sends them an unsolicited letter or shows up or calls them. And the claim is that we can help save your home, cure the default, or get that loan refinanced. They will demand quick action. Pay me in advance, and you need to give me an interest in the property as collateral or security for me to save your house for you. And then these folks do little or nothing, or they do stuff that could have been done for free. And our homeowner loses the house to foreclosure anyway. And they're out the money that they paid to the scammer, or worse yet, they have deeded or allowed a security interest in their home to go to the scammer. We have in the state of California, the Mortgage Foreclosure Consultants Act that was passed years ago to safeguard the public against deceit and financial hardship, prohibit representations that tend to mislead, and encourage fair dealings in the rendition of foreclosure services. This act provides both civil and criminal penalties, and most importantly, it requires a written contract, and it requires that all work promised in the written contract is done before any money changes hands. The legislature enacted these protections, and in the beginning of these statutes, the legislature likes to make big grand pronouncements called legislative findings and declarations. And here's what they said about why we needed these laws. Homeowners are subject to fraud, deception, harassment, and unfair dealing by foreclosure consultants from the time a notice of default is recorded until the time surplus funds from any foreclosure sale are distributed to the homeowner or their successor. They find that the foreclosure consultants represent that they can assist homeowners who have defaulted on obligations secured by their homes, but often foreclosure consultants charge high fees, secured by a deed of trust on the residence to be saved, and perform no service, or essentially a worthless service. The homeowner then relies on the consultant's promise of help, and the homeowner takes no other action or is diverted from lawful businesses that could render beneficial services. Then the homeowner loses the home, sometimes to the very consultant who purchases it at a fraction of its value before it's sold at foreclosure sales. When we're talking about foreclosure, again, it's important to remember that the foreclosure notices are public records, and the fraudster will contact the homeowner, offer to help save the home, represent themselves maybe as a foreclosure consultant, a mortgage rescue service, a loan modification company, or any other term. It doesn't matter, because under the law, they do the work of a foreclosure consultant, and that's what they are. Some of them are legitimate, but others are not. And so part of our foreclosure letter is warning people to be on the lookout for those that might be looking to take advantage of them. And then in the California Civil Code, section 2945.4, for my lawyer friends, it is illegal for these individuals to demand compensation until after they have fully performed all services promised. It's illegal for them to claim fees, interest, or other compensation that exceeds 10% per year of the amount of the loan that they make to the homeowner. It's illegal to take any form of security to secure their payment, which would include making the homeowner assign their wages to them, or taking a lien secured by the property. It's also illegal for a homeowner, or illegal for the foreclosure consultant to acquire any interest in the foreclosed property. And really important, it is illegal for the consultant to require power of attorney over the homeowner's finances, or for any purpose. Oops, let me go back. Another scam that we're seeing is real property recordation fraud, which is basically fraud involving recording documents. The scammer creates a false promissory note showing that the homeowner owes the scammer money. They will forge and record a deed of trust securing the promissory note, meaning that they make up documents that falsely claim that our homeowner has used his house to secure a debt, and the homeowner may never know about the recorded deed during their lifetime. So now you've got the situation where a senior owns their home. They at the time of their death, when the house is supposed to pass to the heirs as they intended, there is a false promissory note, and this person has an interest in the home. And it's very difficult for us to deal with that because, again, hard to prove fraud when we don't have the person to tell us, I never signed that document. Another scam targeting homeowners, and in particular seniors, is reverse mortgage scams. And not all reverse mortgages are bad. They serve an important purpose. A reverse mortgage is a loan that allows homeowners aged 62 and older to borrow against the equity in their home. And the purpose of a reverse mortgage is to provide additional financial support and help seniors in retirement. It's called a reverse mortgage because instead of making monthly payments to a lender, which is what you do with a traditional mortgage, the lender makes payments back to the borrower, and the borrower is not required to pay back the loan until the home is sold or otherwise vacated. So as long as the borrower lives in the home, they aren't required to make any monthly payments toward the balance. We see scammers, however, using reverse mortgages to steal the equity in a senior's home. The scammer will target an elderly homeowner who has substantial equity in their property. And in these cases, our scammer might be a loved one, a caregiver, a financial advisor, somebody who pressures the elder homeowner to take that reverse mortgage. Maybe they're going to say there's this great investment that you can participate in. They'll often tell the senior homeowner that this is free money, and I can make this money make money for you. Or maybe the person comes back to the senior and pressures them into gifting them that money. We've seen situations when I was doing elder abuse cases where a caregiver needs a new car, or a new girlfriend who's 40 years younger than our senior claims to need immediate medical care, and it's all just a big scam to steal the money from the senior. Or we've seen cases recently where a caregiver wanted to be paid more than IHSS for the care and pressured the senior to take the reverse mortgage in order to pay them more money for their care. We also see situations where a person abuses financial power of attorney to steal equity in the senior's home. Because of the financial power of attorney, they can take out the reverse mortgage in the elder's name. And Serrano, no, sorry, it's my dog. That's why it's really important to not allow financial power of attorney over seniors unless there's a really specific reason for that. We're seeing financial power of attorney, which requires a person who holds that power to use the senior's money only to benefit the senior. And it becomes a form of embezzlement when they use it to benefit anything other than that senior. Reverse mortgages may not be the best financial plan for a senior because they'll often have very high closing costs and fees. And the homeowner still has to pay property taxes, homeowners insurance, homeowners association dues, if any. And these become scams when the elder loses their house to foreclosure and the scammer takes off with the proceeds of that loan. Title scam and rent skimming is another scam that targets homeowners involving foreclosure consultants. In these cases, the foreclosure consultant will contact the homeowner who's in distress because they're in foreclosure. They will offer a loan or fast cash in exchange for taking over the mortgage and title to the house. They'll often promise use of their good credit. And so the consultant says, I can refinance your house and I will save it for you. You just need to deed it over to me temporarily. And then you're going to pay me rent to stay in the residence while I get this financing. The problem is, of course, if our homeowner deeds their house to another person, deeds aren't temporary. They're forever until the consultant deeds it back. So there is no guarantee that that person will do what they promise to do. And that's why it is illegal for foreclosure consultants to acquire any interest in the property. When that consultant fails to apply the homeowner's rent payments to the mortgage, the house goes into foreclosure anyway. The homeowner loses the house, and all of the money they paid to the consultant as rent or for fees for rescue are lost as well. Rent skimming in California is actually grounds for civil lawsuit as well as a crime. These are statutes that were passed all the way back in 1986 to protect home sellers, lenders, and tenants. They address the use of revenue received from the rental of a parcel of residential real estate at any time during the first year period after the property is acquired, without applying the revenue or its equivalent to the payments due on all mortgages and deeds of trust encumbering that property. So the problem was unscrupulous people buying up houses, renting them out, and then letting the house go into foreclosure, and they've got a year's worth of rent. And then they just go on to the next one and the next one and the next one. And all of the victims of this are the person who sold the house, the lenders who give loans for the mortgages, and then all of the families who are paying rent and then get evicted when the house goes into foreclosure sale. For it to be a crime, however, we need multiple acts of skimming, which means 5 or more in a 2-year period. And the criminal penalty applies if the money is not used to make the property habitable or for unforeseen medical treatment. Those are the only exceptions to the law that says if you take rent money, you have to use it to pay the mortgage on the property. Theft and fraud convictions can be hard for us to obtain on these facts because we need to prove that the skimmer had the intent to defraud at the time the sale took place, as opposed to at some later time when the rent was diverted away from paying the mortgage. And so that's why they gave us this statute. I don't think we've ever prosecuted a rent skimming case in Contra Costa because it requires us to find somebody who's basically in the business of doing this. What I could find was a published case that gave us an example where a couple literally were in business doing just this. They established PO boxes, opened bank accounts, filed articles of incorporation using various names, and they used legal notices in the newspaper to identify homes that were going into foreclosure. They contacted the homeowners and offered to assume their mortgages and save their credit, again, if they just deeded the houses over to them. Some of these folks stayed in their houses and paid rent back to the skimmers. Others moved out, and the skimmers rented the house back to other people, taking from them first, last deposit, as well as the monthly rent. Then on every single one of these houses that they owned in the name of a business, they filed bankruptcy. And that had the effect of staying the foreclosure. So the house didn't go into foreclosure because the owner of the house was in bankruptcy proceedings. And they just kept collecting rent without making a single payment on these mortgages. When the bankruptcy cases got dismissed, they would just file new ones to try to keep the scam going as long as possible. When the houses finally did go into foreclosure, all of the people living in them got evicted and the skimmers kept all of the rent. So they were actually prosecuted for violating this rent skimming law, and they were convicted. But you can't undo all of the harm caused to families who are paying rent, staying in their houses, and getting evicted because the houses go into foreclosure and are sold to other buyers. So for my lawyer friends to look at the prohibited practices for people who act as foreclosure consultants, you take a look at Civil Code section 2945.4. These practices can also be the basis of a civil lawsuit. They include demanding upfront payments from the homeowner, taking these excessive fees or wage assignments, or using the property as security. Also taking undisclosed payments from third parties that might be a conflict of interest, taking power of attorney from the homeowner, and not having any written contract or pressuring the homeowner to enter into a contract that doesn't comply with the law. It is illegal under California law to even try to pressure a homeowner to give up their rights. It can also be a felony to do these things. In one case, unsophisticated first-time buyers with young children who were days away from losing their home to foreclosure were contacted by a foreclosure consultant. And they were in such desperate circumstances that they testified in this case that they basically signed whatever papers were put in front of them and did whatever they were told to do. There was no contract between them. They signed a promissory note promising to pay the consultant $80,500 within 2 years. But the cash from the housing deal never materialized. The house was given to the consultant as collateral. They brought in a third person, we call this a straw person, who had better credit. And that person's credit was used to purchase their home. It basically cashed out the equity in their home, but left them with much higher mortgage payments that they couldn't afford. The third person, the straw person, got $30,000 from the sale of the house. In the end, the homeowners only got about $20,000 when their house was sold because it was used as collateral for the loan. They never got the funds. They paid the consultant. And part of the deal was that the house was going to be deeded back to them, but it came back to them with a mortgage they couldn't afford. Not only that, the mortgage was in the name of this third person. So when they tried to make the mortgage payments, the bank wouldn't accept it because they weren't the person who the loan went to. So they lost their home to foreclosure and lost all of the equity that they actually had in the house. They were able to sue the consultant in civil court, but his defense was the fact that there were notarized signatures on all the documents. So once again, the presumption is that if you signed something, you understood it. And so it's really important that people who are in those really stressful situations slow everything down, don't sign things until they understand them. One of the other problems in this case was that all of the dealings were in cash. So there was no paper trail for where money went. So the consultant claimed in court that he gave the family this $80,500 in cash, and there was no evidence of that transaction. He claimed that he had cash in a paper bag that he gave to them. Under California law, when a person with the capacity of reading and understanding an instrument signs it, that person is, in the absence of fraud, misrepresentation, and imposition, bound by its contents and is prevented from saying that what the document says is contrary to their intentions or understanding. In that particular case, the civil court found that there was fraud and misrepresentation involved, and that the homeowners were deceived by the consultant's actions. And a big part of that was based on the fact that under the California law for foreclosure consultants, the consultant failed to get a written requirement as that law requires. So let's talk about some fraud warning signs. These are things that should be red flags for homeowners, that there might be fraud involved with their home. If they receive official documents of a property transfer and have no idea that there was a property transfer. If they usually get a property tax bill in the mail every year, and this year it doesn't come. If they do receive mortgage documents or a payment book for a strange loan that they've never seen before, that they did not authorize. If they are in foreclosure and get unsolicited contact about the default or foreclosure, and they're pressured to act fast, pay cash, pay up front, sign quick without reading, or sign quick without getting advice, that's a big red flag. If the company that they are working with, or the person that they're working with or thinking of working with, as a foreclosure consultant, guarantees that they can stop a foreclosure or guarantees that they can get a loan modified, there is no guarantee. If that person advises the homeowner, hey, don't pay your mortgage, you're going to pay me instead, paying the failure to pay the mortgage is what creates the foreclosure in the first place. If you are looking, if our homeowner is thinking of working with a foreclosure consultant or somebody promising to help them save their house, and the only time that they meet with this person is online or on the phone or in a public place or at the residence, that should be a red flag, because legitimate businesses have offices. They're not going to be meeting somewhere that's in public, or worse now, too many things are being done virtually or over the phone. To avoid foreclosure scams, homeowners should research that unsolicited help before accepting it. Ask detailed questions. These are people that are not out to help, they're out to steal money. And so they won't be able to answer detailed questions about how it's going to work or what they're going to do. They should read and understand all materials provided before signing anything. I know we have some of our lawyers for family justice on this call. And so if you have a client who is a homeowner, and they bring you, tell them, let you take a look at it and make sure they understand what they're signing before they sign it. They should never, ever pay cash up front. And the law requires a written contract, and that all work under that contract be done prior to paying anything. They should never give personal financial information online or over the phone. And we really warn people against paying in cash or accepting cash as part of a real estate transaction, or even using a wire transfer, because these are financial transactions that we can't trace. So there's no evidence of where the money went. If you remember the case that I gave you, that was an example from the bankruptcy court, the scammer testified falsely that he gave the homeowners all of the money that they agreed to get, but just in cash. So they couldn't prove they didn't receive it, and there was no paper trail for that financial transaction. And so we recommend the use of a personal check or a cashier's check, because these can be traced. This can be more of a challenge if you're working with clients that are unbanked. And I think we need to think about now how money is being exchanged through platforms like Venmo, that are online platforms, or even through cryptocurrency, which is probably another class that we can teach. And the most important thing is, if it's too good to be true, it usually is. For folks that might be in a position to hear a disclosure that might be fraud, or to need to advise a client on how to avoid or recognize fraud, this website is a fantastic tool. It's Freddie Mac. So it is in very easy to understand English language, but it's over the internet, so it's subject to translation. If you can use an online translation tool to recognize scams, how to get help, and how to avoid fraud. If you need a client to just sit down and take a look at something, or if you guys want to go to this site yourself and get a little bit more information about general types of fraud and how we can avoid them. Renters are also targets of scam as well. And one of the most common is scams involving Zillow or Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, where properties are listed for rent online by scammers who don't actually own them or don't even have the authority to rent them out. The three variations of this that we're seeing are knockoff listings, illegal sublets, and ghost rentals. A knocked off listing is one that's been copied and pasted by the scammer from a legitimate listing. But then under the fake listing, it is offered at a super low price, because the whole idea is to steal your client's first, last, and deposit. An illegal sublet involves a scammer who actually gets access to the property, might even show it to your client as if it's their own, but they don't actually have the authority to rent it out. And what we've seen is the scammer who cuts off the lockbox on a property that is owned by somebody else, or they'll even go in and change the locks. And again, the goal is to steal your client's first, last, and deposit. A ghost rental involves a scammer who lists properties that aren't even for rent or a property that doesn't actually exist. And here again, the intent is to lure your victim to give up their money with promises of low rent and great amenities. They're out to get your client's money before client finds out about it, and then they simply disappear. In all of these cases, your client will be pressured to give the money quick in order to hold the property. And again, they're going to be asking for cash or wire transfers or other online transfers because those are pretty much untraceable for us. These will be super quick transactions that don't go through the normal rental process. Like before you're going to rent the property, you have to fill out a rental application and go through a credit check and sign a lease. Nope, they just want the money. And then the prospective tenant finds out when they go to the scheduled walkthrough or the day that they're supposed to arrive and pick up the key that the scammer is a no-show, or the property doesn't even exist and they've lost everything that they've paid. This can be devastating for our families that, coming up with first, last, and deposit in cash is an enormous undertaking. That might be all the money that the family has. A family with kids, a family that has issues with being undocumented, unbanked, doesn't speak English as a first language, maybe it is a interpersonal violence survivor that's trying to leave an abusive situation, and now what do they do? And so if you are working with a client who is mentioning finding this great apartment for rent in this great neighborhood with great schools for the kids, and it's amazing how low the rent is, hit the pause button and make sure that your client isn't going to become not just a survivor, but also a victim of a rental scam. For those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to look for vacation rentals, these same scams occur for vacation rentals. So be on the lookout for them if you are looking to rent that great house on the lake for your summer vacation. They might take your deposit and disappear because it's a scam. Fraud warning signs for renters might be rental listings that contain crazy grammatical errors or strange wording, or if you see the same rental listing that's posted on multiple websites, but under different names. So the same exact rental listing won't be offered by multiple people because that indicates that there are different people who own this property. That might be the knockoff listing that has been copied by your scammer. And again, they're trying to steal your client's first, last, and deposit before they realize that fraud is involved. Your client might be working with the landlord or the agent who comes up with all these crazy excuses for why they can't meet in person, why a client can't even look at the property or view it in person before they send that immediately required first, last, and deposit in cash. The fact that there are no face-to-face meetings with this person can be a red flag. We were seeing the client claim or the landlord claiming to be out of town or out of the country, and that's why we have to do everything online or over the phone. And of course, the insistence will be on a cash deal or a wire transfer, and a pressure to act quick. They'll say things like, well, I've got all these other people that are interested in the property, so if you don't want it, I've got lots of other people that I can give it to. And that pressure to act fast when it seems, again, too good to be true, it probably is. And if the rent is far below market value for this property, then that's an enormous red flag. For your clients that are renters, tips to avoid rental scams are verify ownership. And so most people don't know that any person can go to our county recorder's office. It's in downtown Martinez at 555 Escobar Street. It's a really pretty building. And you can conduct your own search of who actually owns the property. You can do it online, or you can actually go to the recorder's office and conduct that search. Again, never pay in advance. You should tour the property, meet the landlord. You should be signing your lease before you send in any payments. If you're paying in cash or by wire transfer, those we can't trace them to the person who might be a scammer. So using personal checks or cashier's checks, which can be better traced, are a better option. Again, never rush. The more pressure to act quick, the more risk that this is a case involving a scam or fraud. We should have in-person meetings so you know who you're dealing with, and get that person's business card and keep that person's business card. If it's too good to be true, again, it usually is. This is a link to public service announcement that the DA's office published about a year ago, that was published in East County Today. And it has tips to avoid rental scams. And the good thing is that this article is in both English and Spanish. So you can use this as another tool for your client. I went through this kind of fast, so we can either end early or take some questions. We have a real estate fraud brochure that will be a handout that everybody who attends the training can receive, that has a lot of these same tips. So you are welcome to produce and share this. I think actually what I'd like to do with the time that we have is, Alex, are you still here? And I don't have the here they are. The Zoom square is up right now because I'm still sharing my screen. But if I can just give Alex some time to talk about what her role is and what she does as kind of the front lines of our response to people that think that might be victims of fraud. Nick, can you let Alex? Let me stop screen sharing here and make sure Alex is still here.
She should be able to unmute.
Okay, Alex, are you there still? I saw her. Looks like she had to jump off. Nope, I don't see Alex. Okay. Oh, there's Alex.
Yeah.
I see you. Unmute. How do we unmute you? Uh-oh.
No, she just muted herself again. Oh, now she's unmuted.
Oh no.
I don't think her mic's muting or working.
We've had this problem before. Unfortunately, it's Alex's computer at the office. Sorry about that. So she's saying that her mic is not working, or she doesn't have one. So one question that is in the chat right now is, do we have the brochure in other languages besides English and Spanish? We don't, but if you let me know what language we should translate it to, we can work to do that. I think that's an important thing. If you want to just put that in the chat for me.
So may I respond to that?
Yes.
Yeah, so I work with the Asian Pacific Islander Legal Outreach, and we have a lot of Asian communities speaking, many different languages, as you know. It would be really helpful if you can start with the, I think like Mandarin, Thai, Vietnamese, any of the communities that are high risk, especially. I think that would be a good starting point.
So you said Mandarin, Thai.
There are many. So, I mean, based on your statistics, there has to be, which Asian community that is usually pretty high at risk for real estate fraud. I think that would be really useful. We do have a lot of Mandarin speaking clients, Cantonese. You can name Mongolian, Arabic, a whole bunch. So just I think starting from your statistics, I think which one is the highest risk, I think that would be, most appropriate.
That's a great idea. One of the awesome things about the work that we do is that we are funded to do outreach and prevention work as well as responsive investigations and prosecutions. Every time anybody files a document with the clerk recorder's office, there is a fee that goes into a fund to allow us to do this work. And so that's definitely something we can use those funds to do. I think that's a great idea. So we'll work on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you need any, I know a lot of Asian communities with their own translators, people who are familiar with the community. So if you need me to connect you with these different interpreters or translators, just let me know.
That's fantastic. If you could just throw your contact information in the chat for me.
Yeah, I will do that.
I'll see if Alex can reach out to you.
Thank you, Dana.
And we welcome any suggestions on how we can do our work better. And so if there's a community that we're not connecting with, or if there's something that we're missing, please do let us know. One of the things that we do, or that we're supposed to be doing with this work, is outreach, just like this. And again, you guys are my first outreach group. I've done a lot of presentations to Family Justice Institute. And it's a great way for us to reach a variety of professionals. But we are happy to speak to senior groups, Rotary clubs, any other way where we can get out the word that these are scams and how we can avoid them, because the best cure is going to be prevention.
All right. Is there any other questions? It doesn't look like we have any. So it looks like we're ending early, but just as a reminder, everything has been recorded, and we will be sending out a survey, a copy of the recording, and also some of the slides too themselves. So, all right. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for attending, and have a good day. Goodbye.